slow footsteps, red-blue lights flashing across his face. This vehicle was reported stolen. He turned, locked eyes with her, run the plate. But she didn't. Instead, she reached for the cuffs. Right there, on the sidewalk, just 2 blocks from his front door. No warrant, no crime, just a black man driving a nice car in a quiet neighborhood. But what she didn't know, the man she was humiliating was a judge, the most respected legal voice in the entire town. And the whole thing was being live-streamed, live to thousands. If this happened outside your home, would you stay silent? Drop your state in the comments. Welcome to Mr. 7 Stories. If this shook you, don't scroll past. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Now, let's follow the events of that night in Bellmere Estates. Dusk settled over Bellmere Estates with a soft amber glow, like honey poured to the maple trees lining the quiet street. The walkway lights had just flickered on, casting gentle pools of light on the clean, stone-tiled sidewalks. The long, tense days in court were finally behind him, and now Judge Kendrick Alton, 56 years old, black, a man who had lived his entire life by the law, was driving home. He was behind the wheel of his brand-new Audi A6, a modest reward to himself after more than 3 decades of unwavering service. Inside the cabin, smooth jazz played softly from the speakers. A mellow saxophone tune mingled with the early autumn breeze drifting through the slightly cracked window. Kendrick loosened his tie. One hand rested lightly on the wheel. His eyes drifted now and then to the familiar homes and trees lining the road. Bellmere Estates had always been his refuge, where he found peace after the kind of court decisions that robbed you of sleep. 1225 Woodvale Terrace, the red brick home he had lived in for 17 years, was just a few blocks away. He felt unusually light. Every oak tree he passed, every white picket fence, every kid kicking a soccer ball on the lawn, they were all part of the life he believed in, until the red and blue lights flared suddenly in his rear-view mirror. Kendrick frowned. He glanced down at the speedometer. 27 miles per hour. Well within the limit. Turn signal? Used properly. License and insurance? Valid and current. There was no reason to be stopped. But the siren behind him wailed louder, drawn out, insistent, forcing him to pull over. A police SUV came to a slow halt behind him. The driver's door opened. A tall officer stepped out, blonde hair tied back. Eyes cold, posture rigid, like confrontation was second nature. The nameplate on her chest read, Officer Dana Kershaw. Kendrick rolled down his window. Both hands remained visible on the steering wheel, just like he'd advised countless citizens to do from the bench. His heart beat slow but strong. A silent tension swirled in his chest, like a wind shift before a storm. License and registration, Kershaw ordered. No greeting. No courtesy. Not even a hint she recognized the man in front of her. Yes, officer, Kendrick replied, voice calm, but tinged with disbelief. He opened the glove compartment, retrieved the papers, and handed them over neatly. Then he added gently, My name is Judge Kendrick Alton. I live just around the corner. I purchased this vehicle last week. Is there a problem? Dana glanced at the documents without looking at him. No nod. No answer, just a furrowed brow and a step back. Step out of the vehicle, sir, she said. Her hand hovered near her holster. Kendrick blinked, his brow furrowed. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Have I done something wrong? Step out of the vehicle. Now. No sirens rang in his head, just a hollow space, cold and sudden. Kendrick understood. In that moment, he wasn't being seen as a citizen, not as a judge, not as a neighbor. He was just a black man, sitting in a brand-new Audi, in a quiet, white suburb. And something deep within Kendrick Alton cracked. Kendrick Alton slowly opened the car door. His eyes never left the officer standing in front of him. The patrol lights swept across his face, a face that had presided over hundreds of courtrooms, had heard the voices of the innocent and the dishonest alike, but had never imagined there'd be a day he'd step out of his own car, under suspicion, on the very street that led him home. "I'll comply, officer," he said. His voice remained calm, but there was something fractured beneath each word. When Kendrick stood upright, his thin fingers and dark skin were exposed beneath the harsh glare of red-blue light. He kept his hands visible, a reflex deeply etched into the memory of black men in America, where misunderstanding can mean the difference between life and death. Dana Kershaw circled to the rear of the car, ignoring his name, his title. No questions to verify. No radio check of the license plate. Just silence, thick and heavy, like January fog, and eyes that didn't care who he was. Kendrick swallowed hard. Then, in the same calm tone, asked, "May I ask the specific reason I was stopped?" "This vehicle matches a description of one reported stolen last week." Dana replied, her voice flat, like reading off a training manual. "This vehicle was purchased legally. The registration is in your hand. The license plate is valid." Kendrick said evenly, though his gaze began to narrow. "If you'd simply check the system, we're allowed to search if we have reasonable suspicion." Dana cut in, her eyes unblinking. Kendrick went quiet. He no longer saw a police officer, but a wall, a solid wall made of bias, a wall he'd seen far too often in racial profiling cases, but never expected to crash into himself. Not like this, not with this weight. He turned his head toward 1225 Woodvale Terrace, less than 200 feet away. Inside, the suit he'd worn that morning still hung neatly on the rack. The cup of hot tea promised by his neighbor, Delilah Reeves, probably still waited on her counter. But now, those simple comforts felt impossibly far away. "You know who I am," Kendrick said at last. "Not as a plea, but as a fact. And you've chosen not to care." Dana didn't answer. She just stood there, hand hovering near her holster, as if he still posed some invisible threat. Kendrick inhaled deeply, the scent of damp wood, of warm asphalt, and something colder, harder, the unseen smell of prejudice. His life, his past, his service, his dignity, in this moment, felt brushed aside, as if it had never existed at all. He stood silently beside his Audi A6, watching Officer Dana Kershaw's every move. She said nothing else, just raised her hand in a wordless signal. A short radio burst pierced quiet. Minutes later, another engine growled from down Woodvale Terrace. A second patrol SUV crept forward, its headlights glaring straight at Kendrick's vehicle. The door opened, and Officer Mitch Raskin, 43, tall and lean, with a stern face but not as cold as Kershaw's, stepped out. He exchanged a few quiet words with her. Then both turned their attention to Kendrick. "I've already handed over my paperwork." "This car is mine," Kendrick said again. His tone was still calm, but there was no mistaking the edge beneath it. He had been patient. Kershaw ignored him. She turned to Raskin. "Check the trunk." Kendrick spun around. "Wait! You don't have a warrant, and there's no sign of a crime. You're overstepping." "We only need reasonable suspicion to ensure safety," Kershaw replied flatly. She nodded to Raskin again. Raskin hesitated, just briefly, then walked to the back of the car. A soft click echoed as he opened the trunk. The interior light blinked on, revealing a clean, orderly space, until his eyes landed on something odd. A small black bag, resting near the right edge. "A bag," Raskin said quietly. "No label, no ID." Kendrick frowned. "I didn't leave any bags in the trunk. My briefcase is on the front seat. That's not mine." Raskin placed the bag on the hood. He glanced at Kershaw, then back at the bag. His expression wasn't quite skeptical, more puzzled, like he was trying to make sense of something that didn't add up. Kershaw stepped closer, slipped on thin gloves, and began unzipping the bag. The air grew still. As the bag opened, the light revealed several small packets, sealed in transparent plastic. They looked exactly like drug evidence in the cases Kendrick had ruled over, and tucked beside them, a fresh receipt, dated today, from a convenience store less than 5 miles away. Kendrick froze. "That's not my bag. I've never seen that before." Kershaw couldn't hide her smirk. "Not yours, huh?" she said, voice cutting like a blade. "So, what? Did it grow legs and crawl into your trunk?" "Listen to me," Kendrick said firmly, jaw tight. "I drove straight from the courthouse. The last gas station I stopped at was 3 days ago. My car is always locked, and no one else has a key but me. Then why is this receipt dated today?" Kershaw held up the slip. "Let me guess, it printed itself?" Kendrick took a deep breath, not out of fear, but to steady the pressure building in his chest like a boiling pot. He had seen setups before. He'd ruled on cases like this. But now, standing at the center of the circus, he felt the helplessness, raw and sharp like never before. Raskin remained silent. His eyes flicked briefly toward Kendrick. There was no judgment, just confusion. But Kershaw was different. She folded her arms, leaned against a patrol car, and stared with a cold, unmoving gaze. "You say it's not yours," she said with a crooked grin. "Let's see where this goes." Kendrick Alton didn't look at her. He kept his eyes locked on the bag, as shame crept beneath his skin like cold water, not because of the contents, but because of the indifference in the eyes of those holding power. He had presided over hundreds of trials, yet never had he felt his dignity stripped so quickly. "I demand that you check the license plate in your system right now," Kendrick said. His voice was low, measured, sharpened like steel. "All my documents are in order. Every fact is verifiable." Officer Dana Kershaw crossed her arms again. Her smirk returned, half amused, half cruel. "Anyone can say that. I need proof." "The proof is in your system," Kendrick replied, eyes locked on hers. "And you're choosing not to look." Raskin stood still beside them. He didn't speak, but his eyes drifted toward the patrol car's onboard computer, as if something inside him was being pulled between duty and conscience. But right then, a sudden clack echoed from a nearby window. Kendrick looked up. On the second floor of the house across the street, Delilah Reeves, his longtime neighbor, stood frozen at her window, phone in hand. A small red recording light blinked in the night. She was filming from the opposite side of the street. 3 more people emerged from a driveway, 2 middle-aged women and a young man. Their confused expressions shifted, first concern, then to outrage. One of them raised a phone and hit record. Kershaw saw it, and instead of backing off, she stepped forward. "Cuff him." The command dropped cold and heavy, like a gavel slammed into Kendrick's chest. "You can't do that," Kendrick said, stepping back, eyes scanning the small crowd now forming. "If you cuff me without a warrant, without evidence, without confirmation, you are breaking the law." "We're responding to a critical situation," Kershaw shot back, then turned to Raskin. "Do it." Raskin looked at her, then at Kendrick. The air grew thick, ready to snap, and then, reluctantly, he pulled out the cuffs, slowly, as if each ounce of metal weighed more with every step. Kendrick didn't resist. He extended his hands in front of him. His eyes never left the neighbors with their phones. The patrol car's flashing lights washed across his face, casting him not as a judge, but as a man accused without trial. "I am Judge Kendrick Alton," he said, voice raised, clear, unwavering. "I will not forget this. And I promise none of you will either." Just as Raskin was about to clasp the cuffs around his wrists, a soft crackle buzzed from the radio on Kershaw's chest. The dispatcher's voice came through. "Update on license plate 6KZ 872, registered to Kendrick Alton. Address 1225 Woodvale Terrace. No warrants. No theft reports." Kershaw froze, just a flicker of hesitation. She pressed her radio button, trying to stay composed. "Repeat. License plate confirmation?" The dispatcher replied, clearer this time. "Confirmed. Officer. All records match." Silence fell over everything. Raskin stopped moving. Delilah Reeves raised her phone higher, lips pressed tight. The young man live streaming turned the camera to himself and whispered. Cops were about to stage the biggest lie tonight, and just got caught. But instead of admitting fault, Kershaw clenched her jaw, yanked the cuffs from Raskin's hands, and barked. We're still investigating. There are suspicious indicators that need clarification. Kendrick looked at her, not angry now, but profoundly, heartbreakingly disappointed. He shook his head slowly and said, "You just showed this entire community that the truth isn't enough to stop prejudice when someone's determined not to see it." And with that final sentence, Bellmere Estates fell into a breathless stillness, only for a few seconds. But sometimes, a few seconds is all it takes. A door slammed across the street. Delilah Reeves, 62 years old, silver-haired, petite but unshakably firm, stepped off her porch with purpose. She didn't need a coat, didn't need time to think. The fire in her eyes was enough. "This is what you call protecting the community?" Delilah's voice rang out, sharp as iron on stone. "You're cuffing a man who's lived here nearly 20 years, just because his car looks nicer than what you expected?" Officer Dana Kershaw turned sharply. "Ma'am, please return to your home. We're handling an investigation." "I'll go home," Delilah snapped, stepping into the street. "When I see him treated like a human being. He's my neighbor. He helped fix my pipes in the middle of the storm. He's the man I trust with my spare keys when I leave town. And you? Who exactly are you in this story?" Kershaw tensed. But before she could respond, a man's voice cut in from down the sidewalk. "I'm live streaming. Almost 600 people are watching right now. You're about to go viral." Jalen Brooks, 27, who lived 3 houses down, stood holding a long selfie stick. His phone was sweeping across the scene, from Kendrick in handcuffs, to Kershaw's tense face, to the growing crowd of neighbors. "Patriot Watch Stream just pushed the feed to breaking news," he continued. "Anyone got something to say? Say it now. The whole country's watching." A middle-aged woman with flowers still on her hands stepped out in an apron. An elderly man paused his evening walk, gripping the handle of his rolling cart. A young white couple looked at each other, then stepped down from their porch, hand in hand. No one shouted. They just stood and watched. This was no longer a traffic stop. This was a rupture. A black man, middle-aged, handcuffed, standing tall beneath flashing red and blue, and a police officer beginning to tremble, not from force, but from the silence of a community no longer afraid to see. Delilah turned the camera, her words clear, deliberate. "His name is Judge Kendrick Alton, and tonight, the whole country is going to see how a man like him gets treated in the very neighborhood he lives in." Jalen's voice carried over the stream. "And if anyone still thinks prejudice doesn't exist, tonight, Bellmere is your answer." The glow from the live stream lit up Officer Mitch Raskin's face, highlighting the hesitation in his eyes. He wasn't used to being on camera, especially not a camera held by the very people he thought he was protecting. Raskin stood less than 3 paces from Dana Kershaw, but the distance now felt like a canyon. He looked at Kendrick Alton, then back at the black duffel still sitting on the hood, like an accusation that didn't need words. "Dana," he said quietly, just loud enough for those nearby to hear, "I think we should check the system again." Kershaw snapped her head toward him. Her glare was ice. "We're following protocol." "Maybe," Raskin said, "but if he's really a judge like he says, and we didn't verify that, then this stops being protocol and becomes a serious mistake." She clenched her jaw, her back straight as iron against a rising storm. "You believe him?" she asked. Raskin exhaled slowly, glancing again at the crowd, now including an elderly woman live streaming on an iPad and a kid filming on an old Nintendo handheld. "I'm not saying I believe," he replied. "I'm saying I need be sure." A soft breeze drifted down Woodvale Terrace, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and warm asphalt, the familiar smell of a peaceful neighborhood, now torn apart by the image of a middle-aged man in handcuffs, standing among the very community he had called home for most of his life. "We just need 1 minute," Raskin said. His voice was firmer now. "Run the plate. Check the name. If he's lying, I'll personally apologize to you. But if he's telling the truth, and we don't verify it, then you know what's waiting on the other side of this." Kershaw didn't respond immediately. Her eyes swept across the crowd. then landed on the tiny lens of Jalen Brooks' camera, capturing every moment, every expression, every twitch of her fingers. In that moment, the screen's light reflected on her cheek, like a mirror she couldn't avoid. "Fine," she muttered, her voice dry. "You check." Raskin nodded quickly. He walked back to the patrol SUV, opened the door, sat in the driver's seat, and powered up the onboard computer. His fingers moved fast, typing in the license plate, 6KZ872. Each keystroke echoed like a countdown clock. Across the street, Delilah Reeves glanced at Kendrick. She gave him a faint smile, not out of joy, but because someone in uniform had finally chosen to look at the truth, and the whole neighborhood waited, still, holding its breath. Then, the final keystroke. The screen lit up with a line of bold text. Kendrick Alton, registered owner. Title clear. No criminal record. Judicial ID verified. Raskin stepped out of the car. His face had changed. No more hesitation. Just one simple truth. They were wrong. Gravely wrong. All information matches, Raskin announced. He is Judge Kendrick Alton. Vehicle is legally registered. No theft reports. No warrants. A ripple of shock surged through the crowd. Someone clapped. Someone else muttered a curse. Jalen Brooks turned the phone toward himself on the live stream and whispered, "There it is." Everyone screenshot this moment. Kendrick still stood tall, his hands cupped behind him, his head lifted like bronze cast in a public square. He said nothing, but his gaze was locked, unblinking, on Officer Dana Kershaw. She took half a step back, her face like carved stone. But just as she opened her mouth, a deep roar erupted at the end of the street. AV-8 engine thundered like distant cannon fire. A black Chevy Tahoe with police plates screeched to a stop at the top of Woodvale Terrace. The door flew open. A towering man stepped out. Police uniform pressed crisp, rank insignia shining. Captain Dorian Valance, 58 years old, commanding officer of the North Bellmere Police Precinct. He didn't walk. He charged forward, his expression as sharp as a SWAT raid. "Kendrick." His voice cracked like a hammer on concrete. The entire block fell silent. Valance stopped just feet away. His eyes swept over the cuffs, over Raskin's tense posture, and finally locked onto Kershaw. Unlocked the cuffs. "Now." "Captain, with all due respect," Kershaw began. "There's no we in this," Valance snapped, his tone cracking like a whip. "You put handcuffs on a state judge, in his own neighborhood, over an unverified bag and the color of his skin." Raskin didn't wait. He pulled the key from his belt, stepped forward, and unlocked the cuffs. Clink! That soft metallic sound rang louder than a gavel. Kendrick rolled his wrists, deep red marks etched into his skin. He said nothing to Raskin. Instead, he turned toward Captain Dorian Valance, a man he'd seen only a few times at courthouse ceremonies. "I'm sorry, Judge Alton," Valance said, his voice lower now. "This is on us. I will personally handle this matter." Kendrick stepped forward. "Captain Valance, I don't need a personal apology. What I need is a public explanation, right here, in front of the people standing on this street, and the thousands watching live." Delilah Reeves raised her hand. "That's right. We're not staying silent anymore." Jalen Brooks turned the camera toward Valance. "The whole country's watching, Captain. They're waiting to hear you say something that matters." Valance looked around. Hundreds of eyes focused on him. And for the first time in his long career, he understood something. Leadership isn't just protecting your officers. It's having the courage to admit when they failed. He looked directly into the camera, took a long breath, then said, "To the community of Bellmere, today we got it wrong. We acted too fast. We failed to verify. And because of that, we hurt a man and this neighborhood." Silence. Then, slowly, a few claps. Not applause, but recognition. The truth had finally been spoken aloud. Kendrick Alton didn't clap. He stood there, wrist marks still fresh, eyes locked on the captain now under the weight of public judgment. Captain Valance, Kendrick said, his voice steady, each word like a gavel strike. I heard you call this a mistake, a moment of poor judgment, but I'm afraid calling a mistake is far too soft. Valance said nothing. Jalen turned the camera back to Kendrick. The live stream count ticked up into the thousands. This isn't just about me and a badge, Kendrick continued, his gaze shifting toward Kershaw, now silent, stripped of earlier arrogance. This is about a system sworn to protect, but far too often it chooses to profile. Mr. Alton, I understand you're upset. Valance tried. No, Kendrick cut in. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. Disappointed that a random bag of trash is enough reason to erase 30 years of honorable service. Disappointed that my identity, like that of any Black American, has no value until the system decides it's convenient to check. Damn right, someone shouted from the crowd. Delilah nodded hard, fists clenched. A young woman nearby wiped away tears. Kendrick took another step forward. I don't need a framed apology wrapped in the ribbon of internal training. I need transparency. I need you, Captain Valance, to look straight into this camera and tell the entire state of Maryland the system is broken and it will be fixed. The entire street held its breath. Valance hesitated. His eyes scanned the crowd. Neighbors, friends, former colleagues of Kendrick, taxpayers. Now, living witnesses to a crisis unraveling in real time. Jalen raised his hand. Captain, you don't have to say anything, but this live stream is still rolling, and everyone's waiting for just one sentence. From the far end of the street, a chubby bulldog suddenly broke loose, charging toward Officer Raskin and slamming into his shin. He stumbled, nearly toppling over the back of the patrol car. A few kids burst into laughter, but no one looked away. The focus remained. Two men standing at the crossroads of justice and accountability. Valance swallowed hard. He paused. All right, I'll say this. He turned toward the livestream camera. His face sharpened, his voice steady. We, North Bellmere Police, acknowledge that there are serious issues in how we act, assess, and at times judge without cause. What happened tonight is a wake-up call, and I vow there will be change. It wasn't a confession, but it was a crack in the wall of silence. Kendrick gave a subtle nod. Good, he said, because without change, a promise is nothing more than a suspended sentence. For the very system you're meant to uphold. 1 week later, the grand hall of the Bellmere Cultural Center was packed. Rows of plastic chairs filled the floor. But people hadn't come for a speech. They came to see if justice could stand, not in a courtroom, but in the heart of a community. On stage, a single spotlight lit a wooden podium and one microphone. Behind it hung a simple banner. Listen, acknowledge, repair. In the second row, Kendrick Alton sat quietly. Brown suit, hands folded, eyes sharp, just like the day he first walked into law school. Beside him sat Delilah Reeves, and a few neighbors who had witnessed the night it all unfolded. To the right, a camera from Patriot Watch Stream was broadcasting live, under the title, Bellmere Faces Itself, a Public Hearing. And then Officer Dana Kershaw walked on stage. No uniform, no badge, just civilian clothes. Her posture was smaller now, but her eyes didn't avoid the room. There was weight in her steps, but also effort, the kind you see in someone willing to confront their own reflection. Good evening, she began. Her voice was a little hoarse. I'm Dana Kershaw, and I was wrong. Some of the crowd raised eyebrows. Others scribbled notes. The air felt tight, like a string pulled taut. That night, she continued, I let bias, not truth, guide my actions. I refused to verify facts. I ignored reasonable explanations. I let personal history and job pressure cloud my judgment. And because of that, I handcuffed a man I didn't understand, but should have respected. Kendrick looked up. His gaze wasn't warm, but it wasn't steel anymore either. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Kershaw said. I'm here because I want to learn and change. A loud humph came from the back row. It was the old man known for protesting everything, from new trash bins to daylight savings time. He raised his voice. Hope you learn fast. I've been waiting for reform since phones had flip covers. The room burst into laughter. Not loud, but enough to loosen the air. Kershaw gave a strained smile. I deserve that, she said, and I want to publicly share my action plan. She pulled a folder from her bag. I'll be entering a 6-month unconscious bias training program, monitored by a third-party oversight group. I'll also help organize quarterly open forums between police and Bellmere residents. And I promise, I won't return to patrol duty until I completed the full process. This time, the applause came fast, real and rising. It started with Delilah, then spread like waves across the room. Kendrick stood up. He didn't approach the stage, but he nodded. Then he turned to Jalen Brooks, still holding his Livestream phone, and said, quietly, just loud enough for the stream to catch, real change begins when the guilty dare to speak the truth. In the days after the community forum at Bellmere Cultural Hall, the video of Officer Dana Kershaw's public apology went viral. Within 48 hours, it had racked up over 2 million views on Patriot Watch Stream alone. Major news outlets like State Herald, Justice Now, and East Coast Voice ran headlines. Police officer apologizes to wrongfully arrested judge, Bellmere's reckoning. But it wasn't just a headline. It became a catalyst. Across cities like Asheville, Camden, and Huntsville, citizens held emergency town halls, demanding expanded bias training and accountability. A Maryland state senator proposed new legislation, the Alton Act, requiring mandatory body cam footage and system verification before any warrantless search or seizure. And in Bellmere, the name Kendrick Alton became more than a name. It became a symbol. In under 3 weeks, Kendrick received invitations to speak at 3 universities, a statewide legal summit, and a national online forum of the U.S. Judicial Council. But he didn't accept them all. He chose to speak first at a high school, a small public school in the very neighborhood where he grew up, standing on a humble stage before 200 black students. Kendrick wore no judge's robe. No fancy car waited outside. Just a man, standing among children, telling the story of the night he was handcuffed for no crime, but for how he looked. Justice, he said, isn't just about a verdict. It's about how we treat each other when no one's watching. He paused. But that night, someone was watching. You were. Our neighbors were. Our community was. Another breath, steady and sure. We don't change systems with outrage. We change them with persistence. And by refusing to stay silent. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was deep, like the sound of footsteps echoing across a shifting nation. Each step a small act of courage. Each voice a refusal to be quieted. And at the heart of it all stood Kendrick Alton, the man who was once handcuffed on a peaceful street, now holding the key to a door of reform that an entire generation has been waiting to open. If this story moved you the way it moved us, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who still believes in justice, dignity, and the power of community. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time. We tell real stories that matter while you wait for the next video. We've picked 2 powerful stories just for you. Journeys of courage, change, and the hope that never fades. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, be kind, and never stay silent in the face of injustice. We'll see you in the next story.